Broadband Breakfast Live Online for Wednesday, September 9th, 2020. I'm Drew Clark, editor and publisher of Broadband Breakfast. Happy to welcome you back for another episode. We've been doing a series for the last 6 weeks or so on broadband champions, and we will continue with this in another 2 weeks' time with Rob McDowell, former FCC commissioner, on September 23rd, and Sonny McPeak, the president of the California Emerging Technology Foundation, and we'll have other events after that too. So we appreciate you joining us on this day, Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern time. Today, however, we're going to do a preview for one of the upcoming trade shows, as tech and telecom reporters and others say. Sometimes we get into the silly season with many different conferences and the like. We aren't kind of going out to conferences because of the coronavirus, not just us, but pretty much everyone. But many of the conferences are going virtual. And next week, for example, we'll have the Encompass show, and that's what we'll be talking about here. The week following will be Broadband Communities Virtual Summit, and Broadband Breakfast has a longstanding partnership with Broadband Communities, and we'll be there in that event as well. But we wanted to welcome you today and welcome our special guest, Christopher Shipley. Christopher is an attorney with the association Encompass. Chris, welcome, and thank you for being with us live on Broadband Breakfast Live Online. We invite you to tell us a little bit about Encompass, what Encompass stands for, who it is, before we move in to talk a little bit about the show. I guess it's being called Connect In, but let's hear from you a little bit about what you expect in your show and who Encompass is.
Sure, Drew, appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me this afternoon to talk about the 2020 Encompass show. You know, like so many other events, the global pandemic, has interrupted Encompass's plans to host its 2020 show. We were originally scheduled to host the show in person at the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas. However, we're taking this opportunity, I think, to create a unique virtual event, that brings together the deal making, the networking, and the world-class policy content that's been a regular feature at our show. I'm an attorney and policy advisor for Encompass, the Internet and Competitive Networks Association. We represent a really robust group of members that includes everything from your traditional competitive telecommunications providers, your CLECs. But over the years, as we've changed from CompTel to Encompass, we've really changed our membership as well to accommodate the growing list of fiber providers, mobile and fixed wireless providers that we count amongst our members. We also have a number of edge providers that provide edge services in some of the most amazing technology companies currently in business and working in the telecommunications space. So it can be a real challenge to make sure that we're encompassing all of the no pun intended, all of the different policy areas that those members care about. But we do our best at the 2020 Encompass show, and I think that's one of the reasons that we're so excited to be putting this event together. You've seen a lot of folks having to cancel their events, and we've done our very best to make the transition to a virtual event for 2020. So,
Christopher, thank you for that broad overview, laying out the position in which Encompass, the Internet and Competitive Networks Association, Encompass. I didn't quite get that until just today. Obviously, in the world of Washington policy on telecom matters, we often, or at least I often, think of the world as a kind of a triangle where you've got, on the one hand, you've got the impact of the tech industry, the Silicon Valley powerhouses from Google to Facebook to Twitter, Apple. Hollywood obviously has a very key interest in Washington. We're not necessarily talking about copyright interests today, but those are very, very significant interests as well, and they often battle it out, tech and entertainment. And then there's big telecom, right? And we have big telecom companies, big cable companies, your Comcast, Verizon's, AT&T's among the most notable. How would you position Encompass amidst that world, so to speak? I mean, where do you see the role of the, I guess you call them competitive providers, the competitive local exchange carriers, is the legacy history there, CLECs, we like to call them. How would you kind of consider your core membership vis-a-vis the role of tech industry and the role of what we've traditionally seen as kind of telecom and communications industry?
Well, I would broadly say that I think Encompass, stands as the voice of competition. I think in the industry, and that's regardless of which sector you're talking about. I think we value the innovation and the ability of our members to compete in either in their existing markets or in the new markets that they might be opening up, and also their ability to bring new services to the table and to offer those services to customers. Because when you talk about competition, you're talking about, and you talk about introducing new products to consumers. You're talking about the high likelihood of bringing a better service at a lower price, and that's something that I think that consumers generally appreciate from their telecommunications providers, and then also our members that are providing them edge services on the internet as well. And that's generally the position that we take, regardless of its broadband deployment or some of the stickier issues that the commission is working its way through right now. We're currently engaged in a number of proceedings at the very heart of the 1996 Telecommunications Act with respect to unbundled network elements, and a compromise proposal that we've been able to find that will enable our competitive providers to continue to deliver their services, well into the future.
You mean UniP is still a thing, Christopher?
Well, some of those are at the very heart of the 96 Telecommunications Act, and I think we've done a really nice job of working with our partners at US Telecom and with some of the other incumbents to find a path forward that I think is going to work for everyone.
Great. No, excited to hear about that. We'd love to stay attuned and stay appraised of that. One more kind of quick thought or question before we move to the show. We have had various Encompass members and staffers on our show since we launched this 6 months ago, Broadband Breakfast Lab Online. We've had Angie Cronenberg, as I think you know, and we also had Jasper, who CEO of Sonic in Northern California. He understood is a member of Encompass, and perhaps we've had more that I'm just not remembering right now. Could you just speak to the role in particular of how your members have reacted to the coronavirus pandemic, and what kind of experience they've had, the demand for their services? What's sort of different now from a year ago, so to speak, for most of your members?
That's a great question, Drew. All of our, I won't speak for all of our members, but I know that when Chairman Pai announced the Keep Americans Connected pledge, almost to a member, we had sort of universal support across the membership for that pledge to consumers to keep them connected during the coronavirus pandemic. And that's something that not necessarily all of the four corners of the pledge, but that's certainly something that they've taken with them as they continue this process of trying to assist consumers that have been impacted by this. That being said, I think our members have also been very mindful of the fact that that broadband is more important than ever before at this point, whether it's through virtual learning. I've got my daughter's downstairs doing some virtual learning right now, whether it's working from home, whether it's the need for additional assistance through telehealth resources. I think there's been a really wide consensus amongst the members that it's important to make sure that the networks are up and they are performing, as well as possible. And I think you've seen them dedicate more services and provide make sure that their employees have the kinds of personal protective equipment that they need in order to make sure they can do the kind of house calls and truck rolls that they need to do in order to keep their networks operating at peak efficiencies. I think one of the really nice things we've seen is that a lot of American networks, have performed very, very well, and I think it's a testament to the dedication of not just the network providers, but each of the employees that I think has sort of gone above and beyond to make sure that the consumers and a lot of our members, serve consumers in some of these underserved areas, receive the kinds of telecommunications that they need in order to really go about their daily lives now that they're spending more time at home and more time in front of their computer.
Right. Well, excellent. With that, let's actually turn to the show. And
Sure.
by the way, I do have it available online, so we can kind of page through it if you like. Why don't I let you kind of guide the topic and tell us what people can expect at Connect In, the Encompass virtual show next week.
Well, I appreciate you saying Connect In. I was told when I agreed to do this that I needed to mention Connect In several times. It's something that we're really proud of, and a virtual platform that we're going to be using for the show. So generally speaking, rather than an in-person event, Encompass is putting on a virtual program that will run live and remain available on demand after the event to all registered attendees until July of 2021. And that includes the contact information for the other registered attendees, the virtual exhibits that our exhibitors are going to be, we're going to be putting forth, and then also the policy content that I mentioned earlier. The show itself is scheduled to run, I believe, from the 14th through the 16th. It begins on Monday, September 14th, with a welcome address from our CEO, Mr. Chip Pickering, at 10 a.m. The opening keynote will feature Michael Dell, Chairman and CEO of Dell Technologies, and then Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi. Senator Wicker is the chairman of the Senate Committee, on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. We're also going to be joined during that sort of opening keynote portion by Tom Cullen, who's the Executive Vice President for Corporate Development at Dish. This is a couple of really big gets for us. I think we're excited to sort of hear the direction that Mr. Dell will be taking Dell Technologies moving forward. Senator Wicker has graciously spoken with the Encompass members before, so it's always great to get an update and find out where the Senate Commerce Committee is going to be heading. And then Mr. Cullen is going to be following up on a keynote presentation given by his boss, Charlie Ergen, at last year's Encompass show, to basically sort of give us a little more information about where Dish is with respect to their new 5G wireless network. So we're looking forward, I think, to not just hearing about the future from new members, but then also following up on some info on Charlie Ergen's keynote from last year.
Yeah.
Drew?
No. Thanks for mentioning these key highlights at the top. And could you just clarify, these are live addresses, meaning that Michael Dell, Roger Wicker, and Tom Cullen will be speaking live, and will they be able to address Q&A from attendees virtually? Because again, kind of, Christopher, everyone is sort of in the middle of discovering how to do this new virtual format. And some people are doing it differently. Some people are pre-recording every event. Others are having some live. Obviously, in our event here every Wednesday, we're live, but this is obviously immediately available online at broadbandbreakfast.com. So tell us a little bit about what to expect in terms of the content and its delivery on the 14th of September.
Absolutely. So via the Connect In virtual portal, we'll be doing everything live. And then we will make everything available to the registered attendees. And so it is important for those of you that are interested in a lot of this content to get registered as soon as possible. And I probably should mention this right off the bat. We've got registration, which is $150 for members, and $195 for non-members. And I think when you take a look at the amount, I mean, you're going to get the same content as you online as you would if you were in person. And I believe, with respect to our registration figures, I'm not sure they can be beat. I think, particularly given the kinds of breaking news that we're expecting, from some of these speakers, I think it's certainly worth the value. But then, we also want to make sure that folks get registered as early as possible, so that they can get a better sense for the Connect-In virtual portal that we're going to be using. Once you get registered and logged in, you can set up meetings. You can start your networking. You can access the attendee list, and then watch. And then just to your point, Drew, you can watch the sessions as they premiere, and you can watch them live. So particularly, if you are in the newsmaking industry, you'll have the opportunity to see the presentation given live, and then you can also access it and go back to some of the things that were said on demand afterwards. And so I think that's why we're encouraging everyone to register early so they can familiarize themselves with the Connect-In virtual portal, how to use it, how to create your own personal schedule, because we don't want anyone to miss any of these sessions and or meetings, particularly since, as you mentioned, they're going to be delivered first live,
right,
and then available on demand.
Well, great. We'll certainly have reporters from Broadband Breakfast there, and appreciate that coverage opportunity. Christopher, tell people where to go to register. We can certainly put a link on this page for people who watch this stream following it. But where do people go to register? And how does that price, $150 for members, $195 for non-members, compare to kind of in the physical world when you aren't just a virtual only platform there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me start with your first question. You can go to show.encompass.org, and Encompass is INCOMPAS. So that's show.encompass.org. And I think the price that we've set for registration, I think takes into consideration the fact that you might not have the tactile, immediate access to some of the exhibitors and things like that, but I think this is more than the next best thing. I think this really tries to take into consideration the desire of our members to be able to not just see some really important content, but also to engage in the hope of doing business and deal making, I think, with members. And so, it certainly represents a significant decline from the typical registration cost of the Encompass show. But as I've said, you're still going to get in real time, basically the majority of, if not all of the same benefits that you're going to get from a typical Encompass show.
So let's keep going. Thank you, Christopher, for that. Sure. Let's go through some of these topic areas that you expect. And it looks like you have sessions here with some of the leading members of your industry. Could you kind of speak broadly to, without going through each particular panelist, digital infrastructure industry, CEOs, investors and lenders, and then your policy workshop? How do you see these kind of rolling out, and what do you aim to accomplish in these sessions?
Yeah, it's a nice opportunity, for the show. Basically gives attendees the chance to hear directly from industry leaders, and I think that's what you're seeing with a lot of those early panels. A number of CEOs, a number of executives from these different companies will be there, including C Spire, First Light Fiber, Legato Networks, Tilson, Zenfi Networks, and more. As well as investors from AB Private Credit Investors, Anton Infrastructure Partners, Bank Street Group, MC Partners, and Radius Capital. We're going to be, there will be topics, on whether it's investment, whether it's on management, whether it's on a particular, as you can see right there in the policy workshops. This is really valuable information and specific information, whether it's on USAC compliance, what the FCC might look like in 2021, obviously, depending on who wins the election in November. Let's see, we've T-Mobile talking about 5G. We're basically sort of bringing in a lot of the partners and attorneys that we work with at some of the most prestigious firms in DC to talk a little bit about a lot of these different topics, whether it's the state regulatory hot topics or business data service pricing. It's going to be an opportunity for some thought leaders and then also for some of the brightest minds at some of our firm partners to talk about some of the most pressing issues that our members are facing, whether that be business or regulatory.
What is the approach that you're expecting, Encompass and your members to take with regard to 5G? I mean, I know you got here the folks from 5G on this panel, but how do you see, Encompass members relating to, or I don't know, embracing or debunking the hype surrounding 5G?
Well, I think, I want to start with, for instance, our fiber providers. I think our fiber providers, see fiber as being a necessary component. And, as exciting as 5G is, and it's incredibly exciting, if you don't have the backhaul and the wired and fixed infrastructure in order to make 5G necessary, then you just you need to have that kind of infrastructure in place. And so I anticipate that there'll be a lot of that discussion, throughout the 3 days, as we break down the need for not just fiber but other services as well, that will really make 5G possible. Our members are as excited about 5G as anyone. As excited at making it a reality, particularly in not just in urban and suburban markets, but in rural and unserved and underserved areas as well. So it's an exciting topic for us, and several of our members are not just heavily invested, but are also actively engaged in the process of rolling out their 5G networks. And I think we're excited to do what we can on a policy level to help them make it happen, but then also to share the news with their customers and with consumers across the country about why 5G is going to be hopefully a really revolutionary service.
Okay. Well, let's go back to the program and head over to day 2 on Tuesday, September 15th. You've got a number of very prominent keynotes. House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn and Mike Doyle of the Subcommittee on Communications of Energy and Commerce, and then it looks like you've got well, I was about to say every single, but you've got 3 out of 5 of the commissioners speaking to you. Just any message that you're expecting to come from your various keynotes on your day 2 on September 15th.
Well, we're really excited. As you said, Majority Whip, Clyburn is going to be speaking. Representative Doyle, who chairs the Subcommittee on Communications and Technology, and for the House Energy and Commerce Committee. And then, as you've mentioned, very excited to welcome, FCC Chairman Pai. This is the first time that he's had a chance to address the group as chairman. And then we're also welcoming Commissioner Carr and Commissioner Starks as well. And, they've been real champions, I think, for broadband and for deployment. And I think we're looking forward not just to a discussion about further deployment, but then also, particularly when it comes to our congressional invitees. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions surrounding what Congress might do next to help support broadband networks and broadband deployment. I think we're really looking forward to digging into some of the legislation that's been introduced and hearing a little bit more about its possibility for success. Okay.
Any quick words on the Legato keynote before we move to some of the things that you got a very interesting afternoon that I want to talk a bit about, but any thoughts on this Legato issue?
Oh, well, we're really excited to have Doug Smith from Legato come speak to the Encompass show, and Yeah, not necessarily. I'm as interested in anyone in hearing what Mr. Smith has to say, and I certainly recognize that that they're dealing with some issues on the Hill. So I think it should be interesting to hear about have them make their case. For why the networks that they're interested in building are critically important to the country.
Well, great. So what are you trying to accomplish in this afternoon session that you've got here? It's you got a number of interesting. I'm going to try to show as many as I can here, although it makes it a little bit smaller. From pivoting in the pandemic to market trends with COVID, broadband to schools, and resources to broadband deployment. Anything you'd like to kind of mention on these series of topics on Tuesday afternoon?
Well, I think as I mentioned earlier, I think that the coronavirus, I think, has kind of brought into stark relief just how wide the digital divide can be in certain areas of the country, and I think we certainly want to highlight the good work that's being done by our members. We have a number of members that participate in the E-rate program, obviously, which is critically important in terms of bringing broadband coverage to schools and libraries, and it's I think it's an important time, I think, to focus on what's going right, to focus on the sort of shifting landscape in terms of what the FCC is doing. There's been a number of waivers of specific rules. There are a number of compliance requirements, I think, with a lot of these programs. We want to make sure that our members are as up to date on what the rules currently are, and then what these programs are going to continue to look like as we make adjustments for the coronavirus pandemic.
Okay. So kind of the last series of interesting panels on your Tuesday afternoon program include stir, shake, and compliance. What's next for competitive voice providers? Could you give our listeners a quick summary from Encompass's perspective of how the stir, shake, and landscape is influencing both providers and the robocall scourge generally? What is the perspective that you all are bringing to this subject?
Well, we have amongst our members, we have a couple of members of the board of directors of what's known as the Secure Telephone Identity Governance Authority, and that's a long way of saying the industry group that is responsible for the development and implementation of the stir, shake, and call authentication framework. And this is another tool that the FCC is using to, as you said, to get rid of the scourge and to mitigate illegal robocalls. And so we're going to be diving into the compliance requirements. The Commission has mandated the stir, shaken framework as of the end of June of next year. So we're going to be talking a lot about what's been identified and solidified with respect to this framework, and what are some additional solutions that still might need to be developed in order to help competitive frameworks ensure that stir, shake, and call authentication is going to work for them. We're going to look at things, for instance, like certificate delegation, I know, which is a big topic, and would allow for additional use cases when it comes to authenticating and attesting to the origination of calls. So we're gonna get into what does stir, shake, and do? What is it intended to do? And then we're gonna look into the future a little bit. Try to give our members as much information as they will need in order to make the kinds of business decisions that they'll have to make in order to incorporate that framework. And then also talk a little bit about some of the Commission's other decisions with respect to robocalls on call blocking, data analytics, and then traceback. So those are just a few of the topics that we'll be discussing in that particular area.
Excellent. I see you have Microsoft and Bandwidth on those panels. How have they been speaking about the stir shaken framework? Are they satisfied with it, or is there a lot of concerns and complaining going on?
Well, Gunnar and Greg are those two board members that I was talking about. We do have others, but we were able to secure Gunnar and Greg, and they are. I can't think of two better voices for the competitive industry to be working on this particular topic. They've dedicated a significant amount of time, and time and resources, I think, to this issue. So they are fully invested in making sure that Stir Shaken works as a solution, particularly for competitive voice service providers. And I know I'm looking forward to moderating that discussion with them on what their hopes are for what the ecosystem is going to look like in 2021, as the compliance deadline, comes to pass.
Great. Well, I want to move on to this topic here that is being handled on Wednesday, your third day of the show. Sometimes it's common, as our listeners and readers will know, for trade groups to bring in some political bigwig to talk about some other topics, some politics, to give people like the lay of the land in Washington. And when I first saw Karl Rove on your agenda, I thought, oh yeah, they're doing that too. But no, Karl is going to be speaking about winning the 5G future. And I assume he'll be speaking about Open RAN and about wholesale networks. Do you have any insight into his topic, Christopher, and what you're thinking of this new hot topic people are talking about, the open radio access networks?
Well, I think you're right. I think that likely is where he's going to be going. As you've said, I don't think that Chip is going to miss an opportunity to ask him some of the questions about some of the more political based questions and ask him to look into his crystal ball. But we were excited to get Mr. Rove to present. And while I'm not as familiar, I think, with the content of his presentation as of yet, I think you're on the right track, and I think folks should absolutely register so they can make sure that they have a front seat, a literal front seat at this point to his presentation on how you do win the 5G future. It's been interesting to see some of the names from administrations past get really involved and invested in this issue and bring their political prowess, but then also their contacts to bear on this, both at the Hill and through their own private work. So I'm sure that he's going to be obviously talking a little bit about that, and I think we're looking forward to it.
Well, the last two areas I want to ask you about here, I'm going to broaden out the view so we can see several at once. You've got 3 sessions on data center operations, aggregation, interconnection, valuations, and then you've got 2 sessions on Section 230. And obviously 2 hot topics. Our readers have been well informed on Section 230 and the coverage we've given to that recently. But let's talk a moment about data centers. Now, why all the data center? I assume because they're a substantial component of Encompass's membership base. Do you see a lot of competitive providers in that space? Could you just talk a little bit about, again, just take it from the beginning, data center and their role in the telecom landscape?
Yeah, data centers obviously critically important, I think, for broadband deployment. As you start to look out at data centers and their role in ensuring that networks reach some unserved areas, where some of our members are able to build their data centers. They certainly play that role, but then there's also just the very critical role of them housing and working with our network providers in order to speed up services and to make sure that services are delivered as quickly as possible. And so it's always been, we do have a number of data center providers amongst our membership, and we always try to focus on that particular aspect of the business during a portion of the Encompass show. We're happy to have them back.
Great, great. How about Section 230? What are some of the issues from the perspective of Encompass on this controversy raised by President Trump's executive order and additional talk about proposed changes to Section 230?
Sure. And I think the Section 230 discussion, I think, is of a great deal of interest and concern, I think, to a lot of our edge providers. Clearly, they have built their business models based on the protections that Section 230 provided, and so the notion of, particularly of whether or not the commission has the authority in order to make changes to Section 230, or whether or not it's more of a legislative solution that needs to be engaged in, I think is where the conversation is going to go. There is certainly, my colleague Lindsey Stern, who's another attorney for our policy team, is going to be guiding that discussion and is currently putting that session together. I think there'll be a little more information on who's going to be participating coming up here very soon. Obviously, we've got the show next week, but I know we're finalizing the details on specifically who's going to be participating in that panel here in the very near future. And then I think they'll be expressing, I think, some of the concerns about the commission's the commission taking a more exacting look, I think, at NTIA's Section 230 petition, and where that might go, what that might lead to, what it might look like, and I think they'll probably be looking at the membership of the commission as well, and whether or not the petition might have the support to move forward.
Well, does that petition from the NTA have support at the FCC?
You know what? I would highly encourage folks to register and then to ask Chairman Pai and Commissioner Starks. Well, we know where Commissioner Carr, I think, stands on this. So I'm not sure it's necessary to ask Commissioner Carr, frankly, or Starks. But Commissioner Pai will be available, I think, maybe for some questions next week. So and then certainly at the end of the day, the ball really is in his court, I think, at this point. So I'm looking forward to the discussion, and I certainly know where I think, but I don't get often into the idea of prognosticating. So
yeah. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time with us. Is there any additional items that you'd like to highlight, Chris, about the show or about Encompass and your kind of policy perspectives and priorities for the rest of the year and looking forward to next year?
Well, I certainly think that we're looking forward, I think, to sharing our perspective during some of the panels, and highly encourage folks to register. We had a piece of news pop up on the show last week, which, if I didn't mention, I wouldn't be doing my job. And I think this is not to be missed. We will be hosting a game day on September 14th at 5:30 p.m. And Chip is going to be joined by NFL Hall of Fame QB Brett Favre, who's going to give his picks for the upcoming college and professional football season. Hopefully, the broadband breakfast universe can find some enjoyment in that.
Is there a season? Sorry, Chris.
Great question. And I guess we're ready to get started, I think, on Saturday. So Thursday. I know my Chiefs play on Thursday night. So
good. I'm sure I'm showing my ignorance on this. I mean, there has been a baseball season, which has been impressive, very impressive to see that, and of course the NBA finishing out its season. So we started this Broadband Breakfast Live online 6 months ago with the pandemic, and it's just been a roller coaster, right? I mean, the last 2 months have just shown that it continues to take unexpected turns, and events that were put safely off to the distance have now been canceled, and events all the way to next year are canceled. And so we have to do things through broadband, right? That's the way forward, is figuring out how to use broadband to help mitigate this and keep us connected until such time as we are able to be together. Well, any final thoughts for us, Chris, before we say goodbye to our listeners? And thank you for being here to preview Encompass's Connect In show on the 14th, 15th, and 16th next week.
Well, I really appreciate the time to be here. I would highly encourage people to register. I do think that we've made the most, I think, of a bad situation. I think we're looking forward to being back in Las Vegas next year in 2021. But I have nothing but the utmost respect for our staff and their ability to put together a real A+ lineup of speakers and presenters for next week's show. And I would just highly encourage folks to get registered and then to start using the Connect In virtual portal to start making meetings, which you can take with some of the sellers and buyers and sellers at our show, and then also to get ready for, I think, what really is a terrific set of terrific lineup of panels and different content that I think is going to shed a lot of light on what the next 2 years in this space is going to look like. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and to talk to your listeners and your viewers, and we hope that some of them will be there next week for the 2020 Encompass show.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for being with us today for this Broadband Breakfast Live Online. We'll be back again next week, Wednesday at 12 noon, as well as future Wednesdays at 12 noon. We've got former Commissioner Rob McDowell and California Emerging Technology Fund CEO Sonny McPeak in coming weeks. Thank you again.